Welcome everyone to our Portal Charity Center for Learning and Leadership Part 2 webinar with Emily Ibrahim, and we are going to let her take it away. Thank you so much, Emily.
Thank you, Carmen. Well, welcome back to Unlock the Potential Success for Students with Disabilities in the Foreign Language Classroom. I'm excited to be here with y'all. I'm really excited about those of y'all that are here in person. So thanks for being here. Now, it's time for some fun. If you haven't figured that out about me, I like to have fun, and my fun is purposeful. So I've got a little activity that is purposeful for us, but I need two brave volunteers. So if you are willing to volunteer, you would need to turn on your camera because I need everybody to see you. So no pressure. I'm not, well, there are some people that I will require to volunteer, but you already know who you are. Um, but if anyone would like to kind of try something different for the benefit of everyone, just go ahead and raise your hand or turn on your camera. What we're going to do is Carmen and Maureen are going to do something, and then we're all going to discuss it. Okay. So here's what's going to happen. Carmen and Maureen are going to communicate together. They're going to have a conversation. Carmen is going to be communication partner A. So Carmen, your goal is to find out as much as possible about your partner related to animals.
Okay.
And you are going to take the lead in the conversation. All right. Now, Maureen is communication partner B. And Carmen, can you go ahead and pin yourself and Maureen?
Yes, I did. I don't know how
Maureen,
you were seeing us, but I have the two of us as at the frame.
okay, there we go. Thank you. Maureen, you are communication partner B, and your goal is to give as much information as you can to Carmen about yourself related to the topic of animals. All right. Now, everybody else, you are observers. So I want you to observe closely the communication between the partners. Note anything of significance, make a mental note or jot it down, whatever, because we're going to have a discussion afterwards. Now, have some more instructions for communication partners. Carmen, communication partner A, you can use any method of communication.
Okay.
Use all strategies at your disposal.
Okay.
Maureen, you are not allowed to speak or use any type of tool or material, including chat. Basically, you have your silent body. Okay.
Got it.
All right. So, Carmen, you're taking the lead. You can
Okay.
use any strategy at your disposal. So, go
Okay.
ahead and start this communication conversation.
Okay. And I mean, just to clarify, am I trying to figure out like what animal she's thinking about, or am I just
Not thinking about, but how does she feel about animals? What does she
okay?
like? What experiences does she have with animals? That type of thing.
Okay. Okay. All right. Let me try. So, Maureen, is there an animal that you like? Do does it live in your house? Maybe is it something that could be a pet? Okay. Is it something that could be wild? Okay, it's wild. Does it live in water? It does not live in water. What is it? What is it? I mean, does it make a recognizable movement? Does it make some kind of recognizable movement? No recognizable movement. Okay. So, does it have four legs? Okay. Does it have a tail? Stripes. Four legs, tail, no stripes. Some kind of pattern, recognizable pattern. Okay. Is it very tall? Okay. I think it's a giraffe. All right. Okay, we did a good job. We did a good job there. Okay. Am I asking for
As
more
much
questions?
as you can.
Okay. Um, is this your I guess more animals that if you could have any animal, what would you have at your house? What kind of animal? I'm assuming a giraffe is not something you want at your house. Or maybe you do. How yeah, what kind of animals would you like at your house? Two, you two cats. You have two cats at your house. You have two cats at your house. Okay. Are they good cats or are they bad cats? They're good cats. One of them, what maybe one of them's good. Maybe both of them are good. Okay, they're both good cats. Do they have any other friends in the house? Do the pets have any other animal friends in the house? No other animal friends in the house. Okay.
All right, I'm going to stop y'all there. Good job. That was awesome. Okay, now it's time to reflect. So first, I want to reflect. I want the observers to reflect. So observers, feel free to unmute yourself and interject or use the chat. But please do participate. What strategies did communication partner A, that is Carmen, use to facilitate communication for Maureen? What strategies did she use to facilitate communication? Any thoughts?
She asked yes, no questions.
Great. Thank you, Kathy. Yes, no questions. Good. What else? I would say she asked pretty specific questions. Like her questions were pretty specific. Oh, look at that. Johanna and I had the same thing. She tried to ask specific questions. Yes, excellent. Those were very specific questions. So she had yes, no questions. She had specific. So she wasn't just asking really vague stuff. Any other thoughts about how Carmen helped facilitate communication for Maureen?
She had a pleasant expression, demeanor. Welcoming.
Absolutely, which is really important, right? Especially because Maureen couldn't talk. So she needs to have a pleasant communication partner to make her feel safe to do whatever she needs to do to get her point across. All right, let's go to the next question, observers. What strategies did partner B, Maureen, use to communicate?
I thought she did a great job because sometimes it's hard to turn off your voice. I find that with my students, it's almost impossible. She did a great job, and I loved how she signed cat.
Yes, that was great. Johanna says, oh, where did it go? She says, Maureen tried to communicate through gestures. That's right. Like she did the gesture for cat. Um, what other gestures did you see her do?
Like you said, as you say, the cats, or when Carmen asks if he's sad, or
Yeah, if it was a good cat.
yeah, if he was a good cat, yeah, you're
Yeah. She also did for tall, right? When they finally got to that it was a giraffe, she like made herself, she stretched up her arm to show tall. What else did communication partner B, Maureen, do to communicate? How did she respond to the yes, no questions? She nodded her head for yes, right? And shook her head for no. All right. Now, communication partners. So Maureen and Carmen. I'd love to start with Maureen. How did you feel, Maureen?
Well, I have to admit, as Kathy said, when you have the ability to speak clearly, it's hard to turn it off. So I had to think about it. And then what made it easier were the yes no questions. Because like when we got into the part about having two cats in the house, and the question was kind of, are they good cats? But there was something else in there because I was trying to figure out, well, how do I say, yes, they're good cats? It would have been even more of a problem if she said, do the cats get along? I don't know how I would have said that. So I think that that's the challenge, especially for someone like me, maybe who doesn't know ASL. Like if I for a child that grew up with limited language, maybe I would have been taught some basic things in order to communicate with my family, my needs. I keep bringing everything back to my grandchildren, but my grandchildren, like they do more when they want to eat. They're finished eating. Like they're taught some of those basic communication things, which I didn't necessarily have to answer Carmen's questions.
So would you say that was a barrier for you, that you weren't equipped with signs or gestures?
I do.
Okay, great.
Or even having like a picture to point to, or
Yeah.
Like if you were like trying to talk about your family and you could, maybe even if you drew a stick figure to indicate that you were talking about your dad or your mom or whomever, something like that.
Yeah. So your tools were very limited. Okay. Carmen, how did you feel? And what barriers did you face in communication?
Yeah, it was tricky because I knew I wasn't going to get language back, right? So I had to be thinking about how to frame the question that was the easiest way to answer.
Yeah.
So I couldn't say like, tell me, like rank your favorite animals and, from A to Z, right? Because that would have been terrible. Or like, I couldn't ask like a complex question, and I had to kind of like lead it and limit what the response could be so that it would be easier for Maureen to tell me what it was that she was trying to get across.
Thank you. All right. We're going to do another round. Now, Carmen, again, you can use any method of communication, use all strategies at your disposal. Maureen, you are not allowed to speak, but you may use the provided tools and material. So, Maureen, these are your provided tools and material. Carmen, could you make sure you and Maureen are penned, please?
Yes, we are penned.
So, Maureen, you know how to use the annotation, right? Do you have that ability? So you can highlight or use a pointer or a pen. Those are your tools. So your tools are this page here with a highlighter, pen, or arrow. All right. But you are not allowed to speak or use chat. All right. So continue, Carmen, finding out as much as you can about Maureen and animals.
Okay. Maureen, are there animals on this sheet that are scary to you? Can you show me the scary animals? Okay. Yeah. Yes, I agree. That is a scary, scary animal. Yep. Yes, definitely. By far, probably the two scary. Yeah. Yep. That one is, yes, creepy and scary. Little less lethal. Which are the animals that you go to right away when you get to the zoo? Like, are any of the animals on here the ones you would immediately go to? None of these. Okay. Is there an animal in here that that's like a more everyday type of animal that if you encountered it, you would be really happy to see this animal like out in your neighborhood or around? Okay. Yeah. A goat would be fun to see in your neighborhood. Yes, that would be awesome. Probably the grandkids would love it too. The kitty cat, yes. You really like the cats. You really like the cat and you really like the goats. Those are two of your favorite, it looks like. Would you ever want to have a fish as a pet? Yeah, okay. What about a dolphin? If you could ride a dolphin, would that be something you would want to do? Or would you want to swim with? No, definitely not. Okay. And what about a monkey? Would you ever want a monkey as a pet? Yeah, I'm with you there. That is a bad idea. Monkey's a bad idea. Have you ever seen a horse, or what's your favorite color of bird that you've seen? A bluebird? Bluebird would be your favorite color bird. Yes, those are really pretty and fun to see. And have you ever had a hamster? Is a hamster a hamster makes you gag? Yeah, I'm with you 100% on that. I agree. A hamster, I think, is, apologies to hamster lovers in the world, but no one ever needs to have a hamster. 100%. What about a bunny rabbit? Same category, or is bunny rabbit more acceptable pet? Maybe. Meh. Are we meh? Messy. Yes. 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 Very messy. Very messy. And you have cats at home. We learned that in our last would you ever have a dog? You have a dog. You don't have a dog. You would have a dog. You have had a dog. You had a dog. I see. Okay. Did the dog look like the one in this picture, or was it nothing like the one in this picture? Much smaller, hairier, smaller and hairier.
All right, I'm going to stop you right there. That was wonderful. Bravo. That was fun. Oh, Maureen, can you erase your beautiful markings for us? Well, Maureen
Oh,
erases.
really?
I'm gonna ask our observers. So please, observers, participate and tell me what you think. So what strategies did partner A, Carmen, use to facilitate communication for Maureen? These can be different or the same that we talked about last time. What strategies did she use? Let me ask a more specific question. How did Carmen use the pictures? How did Carmen use the provided materials to facilitate communication? Did she ask about random things, or did she ask about things that were on that sheet? Okay, Johanna says she tried to get a little more information this time by using the chart. Excellent. Going off of what Johanna said, she used what was on the chart to solicit information, right? She saw what was there and then she asked questions about those things. Now, how did the overall communication change with the addition of the visuals? How was this communication different from the first communication without the visuals?
I think it was able to be more complex.
Yeah. Great. What else? Can someone elaborate on that? How was it more complex?
Can I throw in there? Like she was able to ask about like the color, what color of a bird would you like to see?
Yeah.
Which would have been really difficult without having any tools to go by.
Yeah, that's great. Absolutely. Thank you. All right, I'm going to move on. We could talk about that some more. Maureen, I want to focus on this last one. How did the visuals change the way that you communicated?
They did, because in some ways, I felt like I was going to have more options of what to talk about, because I didn't have to figure out how to relate to her that, a snake was scary to me, or, the shark, what are you going to do? So it just felt like I could have and it was used before, a more detailed conversation, a longer conversation. I felt like having some of those tools, especially if you get to the point. Now, I don't know if I was really supposed to write on there when I said that the whatever was messy, rabbits. But that, changes, in my mind, the dynamic of everything. If you have the ability to write something or type something, or, you have a communication board that you can use with a child or something like that.
So when I asked you the question, how did visuals change the way you communicated? The first thing you actually talked about was the way that you felt. Like having the visuals there made you feel more secure and made you feel like, it made you feel empowered to be able to communicate. Not just that it gave you more things to talk about, but it made you feel more confident because you had those visuals.
Absolutely.
Carmen, how did the visuals change the way that you communicated?
Oh, it really kind of put parameters for what I was going to ask, right? So like if you had given me a different communication board, I would have asked different things, right? Like if instead of colors, I had like emojis, like I asked about how did it make you feel, but like if the emojis had been there, then maybe I would have said more things like, when you see the lion, which of these do you feel? Or when you see, you know what I mean? I could have maybe done different things. So I thought it was, it gave me something to work with,
Yeah.
I could say, like when I saw the shark and the snake, I was like, okay, scary animals. Like I can learn something more complex from what I have here. Whereas before I was like, oh my gosh, this blank slate, it's harder for me, even having all the tools that I had, because I don't have like a common ground. So it kind of gave me a common ground.
Yeah, great. Well, I had another round prepared. We're not going to take the time to do it, but I just want you to look at this and think what could be possible, right? If Carmen and Maureen had this to communicate with, and Maureen could highlight or point to these different things, like how much more their conversation could be expanded, how Maureen might be more empowered to express herself, or how Carmen might be more empowered to find out more about Maureen. So thank you, Carmen and Maureen. Un aplauso. Thank you so much for being brave and volunteering for us, or being
Volunteering.
volunteering. You weren't really you were told, but thank you. I appreciate it.
Can I just throw in really quick, just one
Absolutely,
example, because
please.
it goes on what Carmen said about emojis. So the students that we had at the school who had limited vocabulary, when they went to art, one of the pieces from the youngest kiddos, kindergarten, that our art teacher wanted to teach them how to do was to express how they felt about art, pieces of art. And so she started with them with emojis, and she did it with the whole class. So nobody was being singled out. So they would come in and they would pick the emoji of when they looked at a picture, how it made them feel. And then as she continued to build their vocabulary, she would have certain words. And when children were ready to recognize those words, they could use the words, or if they had to go back and still use the emojis, they were using the emojis. But I could see how something like that could help some of our kiddos who have limited language skills to participate.
Absolutely. Maureen just taught the next point for us. So thank you, Maureen. Absolutely. I love emojis, and I use emojis, always have them up in class. So very powerful tool for our kids with limited, and even our typically developing kids, like to have those up there empowers them to be able to express themselves as well. So all of that was to bring us to this point, and that is to embrace alternatives. Embrace alternatives. And so we are specifically going to talk about two different types of alternatives. We're going to talk about alternative forms of communication, which is what we kind of experienced just now, alternative forms of communication. And then we're going to look at alternative forms of assessing, which can often be a challenge in any classroom, but especially I think assessing can be challenging in the foreign language classroom. So as humans, what means of communication do we use? Unmute yourself or type something in the chat. What means of communication do we use as humans? Facial expressions, gestures, what else? Expressions, language, tone. Ooh, that's good. Tone, that's right. You can say the same word and say it in different tones, and it's going to mean something different. What types of language are there? There's writing, that's written language. Body language, yeah. Spoken language, good. I saw earlier someone put drawing. Amazing. All right, so there are so many ways that we communicate as humans. In the language classroom, we sometimes get fixated on spoken language, and then below that, like written language. But communication is so much more than spoken language. And so we're going to look at some of these specifically and how they relate to the foreign language classroom. So embrace alternative forms of communication. The first one is pointing. So I have a story about emojis. It was story time at the summer camp for kids with Down syndrome. We were sitting in our story time circle, and in the story, the character was feeling a certain emotion, let's say happy. And so I had a little cart that I would push to my room, to every room that I would go teach. I didn't have the luxury of having my own room with everything up. But on that cart, the one thing that I always had for students to see was a poster with emotion icons, and then the emotion written in Spanish underneath. That was always there. And so Stella, during the story, Stella was nonverbal. And during the story, she gets up, she's supposed to be sitting. She gets up and runs over to the cart and points to the emotion that the character was feeling. Stella was communicating. She was showing that she understood, and she was using her way of expressing, of communicating to tell us how that character felt. So maybe I didn't, but maybe I should have provided Stella with her own set of emoji cards. And then it just would have been right there, accessible to her to use anytime she wanted to express how she was feeling or to point to it to show how the character in the story was feeling. But pointing is a powerful way of communicating. It is a valid form of communication. Next is an AAC device. That's augmentative and alternative communication device. If you've spent a lot of time around students with disabilities, you might be familiar with this, but what we generally think of is something kind of like an iPad, and it has a special program on it that's for the person to communicate. And generally it has little icons, pictures, and the person can touch that picture and it will speak. And they can just use it for single words, or they can make an entire sentence or phrase out of it. Now, how can we use that in the foreign language classroom? I'm so glad you asked. That's a great question. There's really two ways that I see. I'm sure there are more, but two easy ways to use it, depending on the level and ability of the student to navigate and use their AAC device. You could make a Spanish folder, and you have the common vocabulary that they might need in Spanish class to be able to use it. So they go to Spanish class and they're going to open up their little Spanish folder or whatever it's called in their AAC device and have commonly used words. And maybe you can collaborate with whoever helps them use that device. And as you're adding core vocabulary, you can't use every word, but core vocabulary, as you go adding it, you can add it to their AAC device and they can use it in Spanish class or French class, or whatever language it is that you're speaking. Or you can allow the student to respond in English. Why? Because that shows that they understand. If I ask a question in Spanish and the child can go to their device and respond in English, they are understanding, and that is amazing. Or it just gives them a way to participate. If we're talking about horses and the child wants to go press horse, it shows that they're understanding, and that's their way of communicating, and that is a valid form of communication. So we need to encourage that in our students who use an AAC device, to do that in our foreign language classes. Next is writing or typing. Some individuals don't have verbal speech, but they do have the capacity to write or to type. And that's a valid form of communication. Maybe they can write, so we let them have a whiteboard and a dry erase marker. And when they want to communicate in class, they can, they want to write the answer to the question. Instead of speaking it, they can write it and hold it up. Or maybe they have a computer that they can type on and show their answer, or have their computer read their answer. Whatever it is, writing, typing are valid forms of communication. It doesn't have to be spoken language. Gestures and signs. Maureen talked about how she wasn't equipped because she hadn't really learned any gestures or signs. Now, what's the difference between gestures and signs? Signs are the official sign language of wherever you are. So in the United States, that would be American Sign Language, right? So when I teach Spanish, especially when I taught kids with Down syndrome, a lot of them are familiar with basics, like the colors and yes and no. So I would use the gestures for the colors and the signs, because they already knew the signs for the colors. And so that was just an easy way to make it understandable for them, and they could respond with signs as well. It was a valid way for them to communicate. Gestures are things that we have created, or I as the teacher have created, and it's commonly used in the class. So if I want to say that this means has, right, or have, and I use this, that's not American Sign Language. That's just a gesture, but it's what we all use in class. That's a gesture. And if the student wants to respond in this way, that's valid communication, right? That's how they can speak in class. Another way is to give choices. Do you want a cat or do you want a dog? Do you want red or do you want blue? And they can choose one of the two rather than having to, come up with something out of a multitude, like an unending number of options. Choices can be like which do you want, red or blue, or it can be yes or no. We saw that when Carmen was communicating with Maureen. So recording, this is talking about pre-recording words on buttons. So there are these little buttons that you can buy. They're often used like for training dogs, but that's not their only purpose. Basically, it's a button that you can press and you record something. Let's say you record the word yes, and on another button you record the word no. And you can put a picture, maybe for the yes is a check, for the no is an X. And the student has those buttons. And so when they want to respond yes or no in class, they can press those buttons. Or if you know that day that you're going to be telling a story about a dog and a cat, you can have one picture where you say dog, one button where you've recorded your voice saying dog, one button where you recorded your voice saying cat, and you put a picture of the dog, a picture of the cat. And then when you're asking questions, that student can respond and participate by hitting the button. All they have to do is be able to read a word or recognize a picture or an icon and hit the button and it says the word for them. And you can record whatever you want on that button for whatever you're going to be talking about in class. I think that's a really cool way to kind of give them a voice. Maybe they don't have a device and it can be whatever you're talking about in class that day. Next is draw. Maybe a student has a really good talent in drawing and you want to just provide them with a whiteboard or some paper and a pen or pencil so that they can draw what they're thinking, draw their answers. That's a valid form of communication. And then finally, pictures. This could be that, like the sheet that we had for their round 2. We know we're going to be talking about animals today, so I'm going to provide you with a bunch of pictures of animals and things that we might be talking about. Or maybe it's individual cards of pictures of things that are common in class that they might need to communicate about. You could also provide word cards if the student can read, if they are good at reading text. You can provide cards with words on it, and they can use those words, just hold it up as a means of communication to participate in class. Those are all valid forms of communication, even without using spoken language. All right, we are back to our lovely student again. We're going to watch some of these videos multiple times, but looking for different things. So now we're talking about alternative forms of assessment. So here in this video, the mom is assessing her daughter, not to give her a grade, but because she wants to see how much her daughter has learned, how much her daughter can do. So we're going to watch this video, and I want you to pay attention so we can discuss afterwards. What strategies does the mom use to assess her daughter's acquisition?
Show mommy, dear May.
She's already doing it.
Show mommy, Triste. Oh, you're so sad. Show mommy, Come.
Yeah.
Show mommy, Feliz. Happy. Show mommy, Gracias. Gracias?
Yeah.
Look at mama. Gracias. Yeah, that's it. Show mommy, Corre. Run.
Yeah.
All right, so what strategies did the mom use to assess her daughter's acquisition? What main strategy was she using there?
I would say gesture.
Gesture. Okay, so she was allowing the daughter to use gestures, right? To do. And what did she say? What did the mom say to assess her daughter, to assess what her daughter knew?
She said, show me.
Show, that's right, show, right? Not how do you say or what does this mean, but show, right? So showing is a way to demonstrate what you know. And in this sense, showing was actually doing or using a gesture. She encouraged her to communicate using sounds. Yes, absolutely. Um, Sounds were a way for her to demonstrate her understanding, right? Showing she was snoring when she was sleeping. She made an excited sound when she was happy. She was showing what those words meant through sounds, through gestures, through acting. All right, let's watch another video. Again, what strategies does the mom use to assess her daughter's acquisition?
Which caballo duerme? Duerme. Oh, which caballo come? Come. Yeah. Eats. That's right. Oh, caballo corre. Show me. Corre. Oh, rapido.
Yeah.
Rapido.
Can you ask the question again, Emily? Sorry.
Yeah, what strategies does the mom use to assess her daughter's acquisition? So what did she do this time? Great. Yes, Johanna. She gave her choices, right? She said which. So she would show her basically 2 pages, 2 different pictures, and say which. And then again, we saw that she said show, right? And she kind of acted things out. So there, the daughter was showing what she understood by pointing when given choices and by acting it out. Awesome. All right. So we are going to look at alternative forms of assessment. Now, when a child has an IEP or an individual learning plan or whatever your school calls it, right? Typically, like there are accommodations in testing, but typically it's like fewer number of questions or extra time to answer questions. But in the foreign language class, that's not always sufficient. It's not necessarily helpful. So we need to get more creative in how we might assess our students with disabilities to see what they understand, what they know, what they've learned. So first, super important, be willing to focus on receptive acquisition for assessment if needed. So again, receptive is what the student can understand, expressive is what they can produce. In the foreign language classroom, it's really tempting to think that learning equals speaking, learning equals production. And that is part of learning, but it's not all of learning. There's so much that is receptive, and especially for our kids that might have cognitive disabilities, speech impairment, language impairment, we need to be willing to focus on receptive acquisition and let that be a valid means of showing learning. As we saw with our student there, show, rather than, requiring that they tell you something, show me this something. They can show by pointing, they can show by doing, they can show through gestures. Which, we saw the mom do that, right? Which horse is sleeping? Which animal is fast? So give options rather than soliciting a translation. Give options rather than soliciting a translation. Gestures and signs. Allow students to respond with signs or gestures as a valid means of demonstrating what they have learned, what they know. So if there is a text that the student must read, for this assessment, consider reading it to them or pre-recording it. And then if it's recorded, consider allowing them to stop instead of having to listen to the entire recording and repeating whatever section they need to repeat. These are easy ways that we can accommodate for a student that might not be able to read themselves, or maybe processes auditory information more slowly and needs extra time. If there is a passage that the student needs to listen to or the student needs to read, split the passage up into smaller chunks. So instead of presenting them with the entire story, let's say you're going to read a story to them or make them read a story and then they answer questions about the story. Instead of presenting them with the entire story, present 1 or 2 sentences at a time and then ask a question. That requires them to hold less in their memory, working memory. Pictures, 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 pictures. Use lots of pictures instead of text for assessing. So you can, again, like we saw in that receptive, when I did my doctoral research, the receptive assessment that I gave my students, right? I gave them 4 pictures and said, which one is, or show me turn around, show me drinks. It could be matching. Maybe they can match a word to a picture, or again, which you present them with multiple pictures and which is this. And that's not just for like a single word. You could represent a whole sentence in a picture and see if they can identify the correct picture that's represented by a sentence. So, alternative forms of assessment, embrace them. All right, our next, oh wait, before we go on, here's what the teacher said about the embrace alternatives. Since she is mostly nonverbal, she would point to things. She would sometimes use her talker, that's her AAC device, or show and point in some way. My daughter, so this was the mom, my daughter and the other kiddos participate and answer questions by pointing, signing, using her AAC device, and they are learning so much. Maureen, you raised your hand.
I don't know,
Yes,
maybe
ma'am.
you're going to get to this with folks, but how do you suggest that teachers implement some of these alternative assessments, maybe with the 1 or 2 students who may need that type when they're assessing everybody else by more traditional manner? You know, if you're asking the same types of questions, but asking them to point to things while everybody else is trying to, take a written assessment or something.
It might mean assessing them independently at another time. It might mean maybe someone else comes in just to monitor the rest of the class while you're assessing those kids, doing it at a different time. Maybe you integrate some of those same types of assessments for your other students as well. I think these are valid ways of assessing for everybody. And actually, I think it's great, especially at the beginning, that we focus on receptive acquisition. So all students would benefit from that. Absolutely, this applies to students with ADHD. Students with ADHD might be more verbal, but maybe they can't concentrate on an entire passage, and so they need that passage to be split up, right? Or they need to not receive the whole passage at once because they try to look through the whole thing and they can't focus. So a lot of these, yes, would absolutely, this isn't just for kids with Down syndrome. These things apply to kids with all different types of disabilities. All right, next, provide needed support. And our quote there, I'll read it to you in Arabic, says, الإيد لوحدها ما تسقفش. Woo, that was challenging. So as I was trying to find all these little quotes, I couldn't find one that fit this point right here. And I was with my Egyptian mother-in-law, and for something completely unrelated, she said this Egyptian proverb. And I was like, oh, that's it. That's perfect. One hand doesn't clap alone. Like we all need support, right? Just like we all have differences, we all have weaknesses, we all have strengths, we all need support. So we need to provide our students with the support that they need. So this support might come from you as the teacher. It might come from an assistant, like a paraprofessional. It might come from a peer buddy, or it might come from a thing like the cow. And there are different levels of support. Not every student with a disability is going to need the same level of support. I had kids with Down syndrome that were basically 100% independent in the classroom, right? Like they didn't need support from any type of assistant, and they only needed the same type of reminders that a typically developing student would need. And I've had other students that needed like one-on-one, hand over hand, side by side, constant support to be able to participate. But if they had it, they could still participate. So let's watch one of these videos again. We've seen this video, but now we're looking at something different. We're not looking at how the mom assesses her. We're looking at how the mom supported her. What does the mom do to support her?
Show mommy, dear May.
She's already doing it.
Show mommy Triste. Oh, you're so sad. Show mommy Come.
Yeah.
Show mommy Feliz. Happy. Show mommy Gracias. Gracias?
Yeah.
Look at mama. Gracias. Yeah, that's it. Show mommy Corre. Run.
All right. So what did her mom do to support her? What did her mom do to support her? She reinforced her answers. Absolutely. What else? Positive reinforcement. She asked for eye contact. She said, look at mommy. Yeah, look at mama. What do you think she did when she said, look at mama? That's right. She made the sign for thank you. So here's what I observed. She confirms in English what the daughter is communicating. So the daughter says, and she says happy. So she uses English to confirm what her daughter is communicating. She comments on what her daughter does. Her daughter pretends to cry and she says, oh, you're so sad. She confirms for understanding. The daughter vocalizes and kind of makes the thank you. And she confirms, the mom confirms to make sure. And she says, gracias. Another time the daughter makes the running sound and she says, run. And the daughter says, yeah. She prompts her, right? She says, look at mama. And then she shows her the sign for thank you. And she praises her, what our iPhone user says, positive feedback. She says, yeah, that's it. So all of these are things that she did to support her. Now we're going to move pretty quickly, but you'll be able to watch this again to get all of this. But we need to provide behavioral support and we need to provide content support. Behavioral support is generally unrelated to the content of the L2, the second language. It pertains to the student's behavior and emotions, their regulation, and it may be needed by the students in any classroom context. But we have to provide it. If the student is dysregulated, the student is not going to be learning the second language, and they're probably going to be distracting their classmates. So we have to provide this. This is needed. And then there's content support. Content support is any support needed to properly understand or respond to the L2 input in order to complete the activities in class. And it's a bit more specific to the foreign language context. So we're going to briefly, quickly look at behavioral support and content support. Behavioral support might just be verbal reminders, like, look at me, stand up, stop talking, whatever, just a verbal reminder. Most kids need these, right? This is general for anybody. Proximity control. When I see a kid that's getting distracted, I might just move towards them. Proximity control also might mean that they need a person next to them, an assistant next to them, like the whole time. We talked about it last week. If this is a student that tends to bite or throw chairs, they probably need constant proximity control, at least until they've learned to regulate themselves in the foreign language classroom. Sensory support. This is really important. A child might be super sensitive to touch. They don't want to be touched, or they might need touch. They might need like deep pressure to regulate themselves. You might not be the person to provide them with those deep massages and strong hugs, but they might need that to be regulated. And so you need to figure out how to support that child. They might need something to fidget with, and that's okay if that's what they need. They might need to have a little gel pad that they stand on that they can squish. So many things that a child might need to touch or to feel or to move in order to be regulated. And so those are one of those things that we can be as proactive as possible in providing so that they can stay regulated in class. A student might need help learning how to express their needs or their desires in class. I had one student that had a favorite song in Spanish that he always wanted to sing, and he would stop me in the middle of class, wait, and start singing the song. Or he would want to show everybody that he was jumping like a frog or acting like a cat or whatever. And so he had an assistant there that was helping him learn how to express his needs and his desires. But I would also tell him, okay, first we're going to finish this, then you can show me how you jump like a frog. First, we're going to finish the story, then we can sing the turtle song. And he got a lot better throughout the 6 weeks, but he needed support to learn how to address me, to learn how to express his needs and desires. Routine is really, really important. All kids need routine, but it's really important for our students with disabilities, especially in the foreign language classroom where things are happening in another language. It's comforting to them to know what's coming next, to know that things are predictable. You can still have novelty within a routine, right? But like my students knew, okay, we're going to have monster. Then we're probably going to sing or dance. Then it's going to be story time. Then we're going to do another sing or dance, or we're going to, act out the story or something. But that predictability is really helpful for our kids with disabilities. And if we have a predictable routine, if there has to be a change to the routine, if we let them know ahead of time, it's going to help reduce behavior problems. And then breaks. They just might need extra breaks. One of my students who had a lot of sensory needs and needed a lot of breaks was able to take those breaks eventually in the room. We would just let him walk around in the room. And so he was still present, but he was getting the sensory support and getting the break that he needed. Now, what about content support? So this is more related to the second language. I'm going to first talk about what you do with the language itself. Wait, no. Okay, let's just keep going. Content support. All right, we've talked about this a lot. Signs and gestures. Provide signs and gestures as you are speaking in the L2. Use consistent signs or gestures, and students will catch on more quickly. It will support their understanding. Modeling. If you tell them in your target language, stand up, actually do it. Or you can have a sign for it, right? I would use this, stand up or sit down. That's a gesture. Modeling, I would actually do it. You don't even have to use the first language. You just show them you do it, and it helps them understand. Pauses. It's really helpful to pause. It's really helpful to pause and to repeat. It gives people time to process what you're saying. Use of L1, the first language. So when I teach Spanish or Arabic, I pretty much use that language. Like we're in Spanish most of the class, but I will judiciously, carefully use the first language, English, to establish meaning. If I can't establish meaning through a sign or a gesture or by modeling or through a picture, then I might just say it in English the first time, maybe the second time. And once the students understand, I don't need to repeat it. But just saying it the first time, the second time, when needed in English, it establishes meaning, it gives them that understanding, and then you can continue in the second language. Hands-on help. Some students might need hands-on help to complete an activity. With my kids with Down syndrome, a lot of them had trouble with fine motor skills, or they couldn't coordinate their movement. So we would act out stories. Everybody would have their own little miniature props, and I would be telling the story, and the monkey puts on the hat and the monkey goes to the store. Some of my students needed some assistance actually completing to do it because they couldn't coordinate the movements. This depends on the child. It depends on the age of the child. It depends on the activity. So I can't say that hands-on help is just a blanket thing. Like this has to be used carefully and in the appropriate situation. But sometimes it can be good and it can help the child to participate and complete the activity. Provide text or visual support. Don't just speak the language. Show them the written language. Show pictures. Draw illustrations. Use the emojis, right? The more they can see what you are saying, the more they're going to understand and the more it's going to stick. All right, we're moving quick now. Aim for independence. Aim for independence. So I want to provide the needed support and no more. The reason I provide support is to help the child be as independent as possible. When I was teaching my doctoral studies, research classes, the lower level class, where most of the students had autism, were nonverbal, at the beginning, it was a lot of hand over hand. I'm going to help you touch your head, shoulders, knees, and toes. But it didn't stay there. Eventually, it was, I'm going to do it next to you and you can watch me. And then eventually, maybe they could do it by themselves. So I didn't stay at the highest level of support, right? You do your best when they're ready to wean them off of it. The goal is independence. In my other classes, I started relying heavily on gestures. Stand up, sit down. But in the end, if I didn't need the gesture, if the students didn't need the gesture to understand, I didn't use it because I wanted them to be as independent as possible. All right. Provide comprehensible input. This one is super important. I want to read this quote here. If the input is not comprehensible, it's not going to do much good for language acquisition. Doesn't matter how much Russian I hear. If I can't understand it, I'm not going to acquire it. Okay? So provide comprehensible input. It's story time. Now, I want you to know in advance that I'm going to go a lot more quickly than I typically would because we have very little time. So my goal here is not that you would acquire the Arabic, but that you understand, all right? My goal right now is just that you understand the story, okay? So I would love if you could unmute yourself if possible, because I am going to ask some questions and I'm not going to necessarily have time to look at the chat. I'll try to glance at the chat, but you can just kind of blurt out the answer real quick. You are free to answer in English. And if you had on your screen, I would tell you that you're free to answer with gestures as well. But since most of you have your screen turned off, feel free to just unmute yourself, answer in English. Or if you're comfortable, in Arabic. So it's story time. في حصان. في حصان. في حصان. ما فيش قطة. لا 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 لا، ما فيش قطة في حصان. ما فيش فيل. لا لا لا، ما فيش فيل في حصان. في A في A في حصان أو قطة. في حصان أو قطة.
Horse.
برافو برافو. في حصان. برافو، في حصان. الحصان بيجري. الحصان بيجري. الحصان مش بيغني. لا 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 لا. الحصان بيجري. What is the horse doing?
Runs.
برافو. الحصان بيجري. الحصان بيجري بسرعة.
Run fast.
أيوة أيوة، برافو. الحصان بيجري بسرعة. الحصان مش بيجري بطيئا. لا، الحصان بيجري بسرعة. الحصان بيجري إلى جيكس. أوه. الحصان بيجري إلى جيكس. الحصان مش بيجري إلى ديري كوين. لا 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 لا. الحصان مش بيجري إلى باسكن روبنز. لا 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 لا. الحصان بيجري إلى Jake's.
The
Where
horse
does the
runs fast to eat the ice cream.
Where does he run to?
Jake's.
إلى Jake's. أيوة. الحصان بيجري إلى Jake's. الحصان بياكل. الحصان بياكل جيلاتي. أوه. الحصان بياكل جيلاتي شوكولاتة. What is he eating?
Chocolate ice cream.
Chocolate ice cream.
أيوة. الحصان بياكل جيلاتي شوكولاتة. الحصان مبسوط. The end. All right. Now, as I said, I went much faster than I normally would. But what did I do to make the language comprehensible? What did I do to help you understand?
You
You use
repeated? I'm
I
sorry.
repeated. Okay, what else?
You use pictures.
Pictures.
You use the toy horse.
The toy horse. Yep, I used a prop. Somebody we have in the chat, gestures.
Yeah, signs with your hands a lot.
Okay, yes, use my hands a lot. Gestures, signs. I don't
You
know if
change the
Zoom
tone of your voice.
changed the yes. Like when I was saying mish and no. Anything else? Gestures and feelings. Good. I also use sounds, but I don't know if Zoom actually picked up my awesome animal sounds. I think they're sometimes like my elephant noise is too high of a frequency, but I was making a noise when I was doing my elephant. So
And your
yes,
props, you had props.
yes, yeah. Someone mentioned the horse.
Love it.
All right. So very quickly, we are going to go through how to make the language comprehensible. This is one of the most important things. We're going to zoom through it. I hope you will go back and think about how you can implement these in your language teaching. First, we're going to talk about what we do with the language itself, and then kind of what we do apart from the language to make it comprehensible. The first is to not follow my example of the story I just told, and it is to slow down. Because when we slow down, we give people time to process and understand. And going slow is really important. Pause. We talked a little bit about this earlier, but pausing gives people time to process. Repetition. The more you hear a word, the more you're going to understand it and then retain it. Typically in that story, I would have repeated a lot more than I did, but I was not following my first point and slowing down or pausing. I was just trying to get through. Rephrase. So you can say the same thing in a different way to help make it more understandable. You can do a contrast. The horse is big. The horse is not small. The horse is big. When you contrast, it helps people to understand the meaning. You can link meaning to something that they already understand. So linking meaning. Simplify your language. I mean, I was using there is a horse. The horse runs. The horse runs quickly. Very simple language. Obviously, this is your first exposure to the language, but simplifying the language, giving the same message, but trying to put it in more simple terms helps to make the language comprehensible. Limit your vocabulary. Limit your vocabulary. I used very few words in that story. Limit your vocabulary. It will make it more understandable for your students. Ask questions. I asked you questions in that story, right? Sometimes I ask the questions in English. Sometimes I ask them in Arabic. Might have been a little premature for me to ask the question in Arabic because we had such little exposure. But you can ask questions to help students understand. So these are things we can do with the language. Now, what are other things we do to make it comprehensible? We can point. I tried to use the little red laser at the beginning kind of as my pointer, but if you were with me, I might have pointed to the horse on the screen. Provide multiple means of input. So you do a gesture, you make a noise, you have a picture, all to show what horse means. Provide multiple means of input. Use visuals. You saw the pictures, how they helped. Use visuals as much as you can. You can illustrate. A lot of times when I'm telling a story, I illustrate the story as I'm telling it. It can sometimes, depending on the child, it can keep the kid engaged, but it establishes meaning when you're illustrating what you're talking about. You can act things out. Again, if we were in person, I would have actually ran, and then I would have danced, and I would have done so many things to act out what I wanted you to understand. Using gestures and signs, we've talked about this a lot already, but these are really powerful and helpful, especially if you're consistently using the same gestures. Using facial expressions. Hussein Mabsut. He's happy. It's obvious what I mean. Using sound effects. These are my favorite, and kids love them. Unfortunately, Zoom does not have the technology to pick up all my awesome sound effects yet. And then using props, as you saw. All of these things help to make the language comprehensible. Now, I want to share a quote with you from Augustine. So he was writing about teaching the Bible, but he could have been writing about teaching a foreign language. And so I found this quote and wanted to share it with y'all. What is the use of correct speech if it does not meet the listener's understanding? There is no point in speaking at all if our words are not understood by the people to whose understanding our words are directed. What's the point of talking if they can't understand you? The teacher then will avoid all words that do not communicate, if in their place he can use other words which are intelligible in their correct forms. But if he cannot, he will use words that are less correct, provided that the subject matter itself is communicated and learned correctly. There's no point in speaking if your people you are communicating to do not understand. There's no communication happening. And so do all that you can to make your input comprehensible, to make it understandable to your students. The next point is similar, but not the same. And that is to prioritize comprehension. So providing comprehensible input is what you are doing, but prioritizing comprehension is what you want for the student. Your priority for the student is not that they speak, it's that they understand. So when we had story time, what was your main job? What were you trying to do?
Understand the story.
Understand the story, right? Your job was to try and understand. Did you have to speak to participate? Now, again, remember, if your videos would have been on, you could have used gestures, right, to communicate. You didn't have to speak to be able to participate. So I want to encourage you not to force speaking. Don't force speaking. It will come. No, it may come in time. For some students, speaking might not ever come, but that doesn't mean that they're not learning, right? Don't force speaking. When we prioritize comprehension, production will follow for those that are able. Production will follow for those that are able. I had students that were technically nonverbal, that were beginning to say words correctly, like in the right context to communicate in Spanish. But I never asked them to speak. You know, like once it was in their heads, they wanted to use it. I want to just emphasize that reading and writing are skills. Reading and writing are skills. They're not, you can know a language without knowing how to read and write. So again, prioritizing comprehension. It doesn't mean that we don't want to help our students read and write if they can accomplish that. But those are skills. That's not language. Students with literacy challenges can still be successful learners. Students with limited verbal abilities can still be successful language learners. And when we prioritize comprehension, all learners will be successful. So I'm going to stop there. We got through all the points, y'all. We did it. It was really fast there in the end, and I encourage you to go back over those last few points and look at them again. But those were how we can unlock the potential to help our students with disabilities be successful in the foreign language classroom. So I think we have a few minutes for questions. I did my best to get through so that we can have time for questions.
Does anybody want to go ahead and ask Emily any questions? You could put them in the chat, or you can just unmute and pop on there. Maybe while people are formulating their thought, I have one question. If I have like a lot of curriculum to get through, right? how do I prioritize within that? Like maybe I work with, other grade partners, right? Like maybe everybody in Spanish 1 has to teach certain things. Like how can I use these principles and still kind of, hit those other metrics, or is that like an inherent tension?
I think it is an inherent tension. Um, like if you have things you have to get through, well, then you can't slow down, right? Um, so I think there is a tension between raising our expectations, right? That was our first point, and I think it's really important raising our expectations that yes, our students with disabilities can learn another language, but also providing that support. And I don't want to say lowering our expectations, but having reasonable expectations. Okay, this student needs me to slow down. They're not going to get through all of this. So maybe I'm not going to, I'm not going to have the same um, standards or expectations for them. If I have to keep moving at this pace, knowing that they're not going to, reach the same level as the other students, and still finding ways for them to be successful, even if it's not hitting the same benchmarks as their peers. So I would say in that case, still expecting success from the student, but adjusting your benchmarks, adjusting maybe how you define success for that student when you have some other constraint that doesn't allow you to slow down like that student might need.
Okay, so like let's just say I have to like teach 10 colors or whatever. So like maybe for that student, like if I can get them to know like 2 or 3 really well, everybody else expects to know the 10, but like maybe for
Yeah,
that student, that could be a good benchmark. And then I can move on, right? Like I can move on to the next content and
yes.
try to get them at least some of it. That would be helpful, I think, to think of it that way.
I have one question, I guess maybe kind of related to sign language, that you say don't force them to produce, which I try to make a safe environment for them to be productive in sign language. There's something about muscle memory in sign language. So I have all my students sign or copy what I'm signing, and for them to understand it. Because I always say with a sport, you can't watch ice skating and become an Olympic ice skater. You have to actually do it. You have to roll up your sleeves and do it. So how would you suggest the students with special needs have been able to do the skits and do that? But do you think that's considered forcing them?
That's a really good question, and I think something I need to think more deeply about. Um, because there is something different between signing and spoken language in one sense, right? Um, I would just say still prioritize comprehension. It doesn't mean that if they have the ability to, kind of copy the sign, that's great and get them to practice. But if there is a way for you to prioritize, doesn't mean you're ignoring them, like learning to do the signs, but how can you make comprehension more important? And find ways for them to be successful. But the thing about like signs and gestures is like in the foreign language classroom, I use gestures and signs, and the kids naturally start using them too. I don't force them to use the gestures and signs, but they are naturally going to start using them before spoken language. And a lot of my kids, even once they started producing spoken language, they continued to do the signs. But I was prioritizing the comprehension, and the production of gestures and signs followed. So, mhm.
And actually, Emily, we only have about 2 minutes left. So do you think you could tell us a little bit more about Forward Abilities and what it is that you do there and how people can get in touch with you? Give us your commercial for what you do with your company, because it's so wonderful, and it's great to know that when we have questions, we have a place to turn. Like there's people to help us, and especially when we're talking about foreign language for children with disabilities, it's a lonely road. It's a lonely road.
Thank you. So Forward Abilities is my business, and it is to empower every learner and to equip every teacher So helping students with disabilities be successful and equipping teachers, empowering teachers to help their students. Specifically, I focus on what we've been doing here today, which is the foreign language classroom. So I help equip teachers to teach foreign languages to students with disabilities. You see my email there. If you have more questions, feel free. If you come across a situation in class when you have a student with disability and you just need some support, or you're looking to brainstorm ideas, please feel free to email me. I offer classes for people with disabilities, and I also offer a cognitive development therapy, which basically strengthens the brain, strengthens the foundations for learning to support students with disabilities. So that's what I love to do. And by God's grace, that's what I'm getting to do. So I'm happy to support you as you go on this journey of teaching your students with disabilities.
Thank you so much, Emily. It has been a true pleasure to have you on here with us, and we are so glad that you have shared this wisdom with us, and hopefully we'll have you back again.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you all so much to everyone for coming on. We really appreciate it. I will send Emily's contact information in the email that gives you the recording. So you will definitely have a chance to get in touch there if you didn't get a chance to catch it on the slides. And again, this recording will be sent to you shortly. Have a great night, everyone.
Thank you. Have a good night.